Hi, this is Nick Kazine, Chief Operating Officer for BDSec with your monthly market update. Just to get into the current environment, we would characterize it as one of just kind of watching and waiting. Many investors have asked us about the impact that the Chinese devaluation and the general dislocation in international markets has had on Mongolia locally. And the answer to that question is there hasn't really been any perceptible effect. However, Mongolia's sovereign bonds, which are traded internationally, have sold off pretty meaningfully, and in some cases their yields are towards the high end of what we've seen for those bonds since they were issued. So as we look at Mongolia's currency, the key metric being MNT to USD, that level's been pegged just below the key psychological 2000 level. It is our belief that policymakers here very much want a stronger currency and want to maintain that 2000 level, but it's unclear whether or not monetary and fiscal conditions can allow for that, and so that's going to be a wait and see. Our inclination is to think that MNT will eventually go through 2000 until we can get a better flow of funds coming into the country, specifically FDI. But it is noteworthy that we have seen a slight uptick in FDI recently, so that is now positive for the year. And despite lower commodity prices, specifically in the copper market, the sentiment with respect to the miners looking to do business here is actually quite favorable, and the feedback we had received from investors that attended last week's Oyu site tour was actually very, very constructive, and so that's very important. Obviously, the largest project in the country. We think it's going forward, and the investors that attended that trip feel the same, and they feel very good about the company, the stock, and its their prospects. And as we talk to contacts within the mining industry here, everyone that we talk to holds a very bullish view of copper in the medium term. It's pretty clear that the supply and demand dynamic does turn very favorably to the commodity in 2017, and there's those that believe in 2016. And so with that, we would suggest investors look very closely at stocks such as TRQ, Xanadu, and Entrée Gold. And as it relates to the copper markets, you had Carl Icahn take a very large position in Freeport-McMoRan, and so these are the kinds of things that you see towards the bottom of the market, and we find that very encouraging. As we turn to the local market, the Mongolian Stock Exchange saw a fairly strong rally post Oyu in local shares, but since then those shares have settled back down, and in fact they're only about 4% higher than where they were in terms of their lows for the year, and we continue to view many companies on the MSC as quite attractive, extremely cheap. As you look at Mongolia as a stock market capitalization to GDP, it's one of the 5 cheapest countries in the entire world based on that metric, and so we think that investors should definitely look to allocate funds to those stocks and also to some of the Mongolia leveraged copper plays. And then just looking forward to 2016, our outlook at BDSec is that you're going to have an economic recovery probably unfold towards mid-2016, and that's going to be based on planned spending for Oyu, though that spending will be somewhat modest in 2016 compared to 2017 and beyond. And while elections typically cause uncertainty within the economy, investors can't ignore the amount of money that will come into the country as a result of these elections. If you assume you're going to have 3 candidates per seat, 76 seats, you're talking about nearly, and then if each candidate spends $1 million, you're talking about nearly $230 million in spending. So next year is we think going to be a healthy year starting in the second half, and we might see some evidence of that just before the second half. And then I think when you get to 2017 and beyond, it's really going to be off to the races for the country. We think that the election does need to happen and does need to be solved before the critical Tavan-Tolgoi project goes forward. But obviously that election is only 9-10 months away. That election is going to happen, and that will probably provide the basis and stability for that project going forward. So we think it makes sense for investors to begin to take a bullish view of the country, and obviously given liquidity constraints, you have to start earlier as opposed to later in terms of getting your exposure. So that's it in terms of what we have to say for this month, and we'll be back with an update a month from now. Thanks for tuning in.